Um, cameras to go on, we can start. Ah, there we are. Welcome to the show, folks. All right, welcome to the Monday, January 9th City Council meeting, the first council meeting of the year. I opened this meeting at 7 o'clock p.m. Please join me in our first mindfulness moment of the year of our first City Council meeting. So please join us if you would like. If not, just, close your eyes or gaze downward or sit quietly during this exercise. So the mindfulness moment is about becoming present at our community meeting and supporting one another as we talk about city business. So shake out whatever stress you have in your shoulders from today. Let's bring attention to our breath. Notice how you're breathing right now. And start to take deeper and slower breaths. We're going to do some big inhales. So inhale on 4. And exhale on count of 5. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. Exhale. So as part of our mindfulness moment this evening, let's find 1 or 2 gratitudes for the day that you silently say to yourself that you're grateful for. I'm grateful for the sunshine, for shining after being gone for 3 weeks. And I am grateful for our new firefighters that got sworn in today, and a lot of ribbons cut tonight in a new business. And remember to wish yourself well, and make sure that you're honoring your space as well. So we do this so that we can feel more present and focused and come together as members of our Ferndale community. And I just want to say thank you for your involvement and being aware of what's going on with your local government. So let's be curious tonight and thoughtful and compassionate as we discuss our first business of the year. And so with that, let's stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so first order of business is roll call. Mr. Clark.
James.
Here.
Leaks May.
Here.
Mikulski.
Here.
Polika.
Here.
Piana.
Here. All right. Next up is the approval of the agenda.
Mayor, I move to amend the agenda to remove 7B until such time as additional information and recommendation from the city manager's office are ready for consideration.
Support. Moved by James and supported by Mikulski.
James.
Yes.
Mikulski.
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes.
Polika.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes. All right, and we are now moving on to our presentation section of the agenda, and we have 3 presentations tonight. And we have our, for 4A, the presentation of our 2022 Holiday Light Awards by our Beautification Commission. And I'm very excited because this is a really beautiful and pretty time of the year, and I'm excited to hear who the winners are. So welcome.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Commissioner. You asked for
grateful for, and I'm grateful for our city. Supports us. We all appreciate it. So our first winner for holiday lights was on 612 East Oak Ridge. And that is David Haggerty. I'm not sure if David Haggerty is here tonight. I was never able to reach him with many phone calls, so I guess he's probably not here. That's it. The next one is 612 East Oak Ridge, and that would be that's in the northeast section. Oh, this, we'll do that. Okay, I'm sorry.
Another reindeer has joined us.
You don't know the trouble we went through to get dressed up for this occasion.
I so love that you guys dressed up and celebrate the winners this way. It's a lot of fun.
We're taking this very seriously.
Okay, 1025 West Hazelhurst. Sean Evans, if you're here, come on up. Why don't we, would you like to get a picture with us, Mayor?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I seem to have worn my brown jacket just to fit in with the reindeer.
This one, he's not here. All right, the next one is Melanie Combs at 855. Come on up, Melanie. Congratulations. Did a marvelous job. All right, let's, okay, and our last one is Carrie Williamson, and she is on a cruise. Oh. But David is here, I believe, to accept her award. Maybe not. He was supposed to be here. All right, well, we'll see that he gets this. And that was it. I do have one more comment to make, and that is we saw an amazing amount of beautiful lights and holiday decorations that were not nominated. And I would encourage people, the folks that live in Ferndale, to not only decorate and then secondly, nominate people, because this is what the event is all about. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ed. Thank you, everybody, for your effort and volunteering to make sure this happens every year through the Beautification Commission. And thank you for dressing up. It's awesome.
That's awesome.
All right, so we're going to move on to our second presentation, and we have a new Ferndale team member, and 4B is the introduction of Robert Birch the new Parks and Recreation Deputy Director to the City Council and the community.
All right, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year!
So I have the pleasure of introducing our newest staff member and Deputy Director, Robert Birch. Robert has over 25 years of municipal experience. Within that time, he's held in numerous positions with the City of Pontiac and the Pontiac School District, including Director of Elementary School Sports, Behavior Specialist, and Assistant Manager of Youth Recreation, just to name a few. Robert holds a bachelor's degree from Wayne State University in sports management. He also brings a lot of field experience from running programs, sports programs, camps, and building management to managing staff, partnerships, and contracts as well. Robert's only been with us for 1 week as of today, but so far he fits right in with our team, and we look forward to seeing everything he will bring to the city of Ferndale as well as to our department. And we just welcome you and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you.
So glad you're here, and I look forward to speaking with you and interacting with you in the community.
Thank you. I look forward to working and serving the citizens of Ferndale. So thank you very much.
Welcome. I also, for City Council, if you guys would do a friendly amendment to the agenda to add a presentation on 4D, so that our Ferndale Housing Commission Executive Director can say something rather than having it in public comment.
I'll sponsor that motion.
Okay. Friendly amendment? Do we need roll call?
You know, if we're going to do a motion like that,
All right.
we should.
Could we just, moved and supported?
All right. James?
Yes.
Mikulski?
Yes.
Leaks May?
Yes.
Polika?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes. All right, so we've just added 4D. All right, but we're moving on to 4C, and that is the 2023 update on lead service line replacement program. And welcome Dan, our DPW director, Dan the man.
Hi, good evening tonight, Mayor and Council. Tonight, myself and our project manager, Jeff Weeks, are going to be giving everyone an update on the 2022 lead service line replacement program. Yeah, so Jeff has a few props with us this evening.
Oh, that's great.
To show y'all folks. So I'll lead off tonight. So this is our second year of the program. So most of you all know that the state of Michigan adopted some pretty stringent rules as it relates to lead and copper in the water back in 2018. Some of those changes to the state's lead and copper rule are additional water sample tests, communities across the state of Michigan with lead service lines having to complete a full inventory of all their water service line materials, replacing all the lead service lines within a community with over a 20-year period, averaging at 5% per year. That goes for replacements on both the public side of the water service line and the private side of the water service line. This is a typical diagram of what of the water service line. You have your water main over there on the left, the curb stop, and then the water meter. Typically, in here in the city of Ferndale, that section from the water main to the curb stop is what we call the public side of the water service line. And that, in any normal period, is always the city's responsibility. And then from the curb stop to the meter, here in the city of Ferndale, that is the private property owner's responsibility. With the lead and copper rule, we are required to replace water service lines from the water main all the way to the water meter. Any portion of that line that contains lead, that's what we've been replacing. So our lead service line replacement program is really dictated by our capital improvement plans that we have going on right now. So our road improvement plan, our water main improvement program, our general 5-year capital improvement program, emergencies as those arise. You may ask what an emergency is. That's if, we have a leaking lead service line, instead of doing an emergency repair and disturbing that lead, we've just been swapping out the entire service line as those pop up. And then in addition to that, any other kind of determinations that we make so we can meet our replacement requirements by the state of Michigan. You know, most of this is guided by our water meter replacement program, which we had an initial inventory of, our material types from being inside homes, our property records, and then as we're actually doing field verifications while we're out in the field. Over the past couple of years, it's really helped us get a pretty good idea based on the characteristics of the property, what we know about our water mains. With pretty good confidence right now, we can say whether we're going to be doing some sort of like replacement at those properties. So the number of service lines that we have to replace in a given year is based on our preliminary distribution system material inventory. So that is a report that we had to submit to the state of Michigan that gave a preliminary description of what our material inventory is for our water service lines, with the final inventory due to the state in 2025. So our number of replacements that we replace per year, which we're required to replace per year, is 413, and that's made up of this material inventory. So that number is based on the total number of service lines that we reported that, you know, we know that they contain lead, contains lead previously, contains galvanized previously connected to lead, and then what we don't know, but we have a pretty good idea that it could contain lead. And that's how we're going about those replacements. So in addition to that, changes in the lead and copper rule, came our increase in water samples that we have to do. So in 2019, the first time that the new water sample requirements went into effect, we tested a 90th percentile value of 15 parts per billion, which is the max that the state of Michigan sets for a lead action level exceedance. So in 2020, many of you may recall that we did have an action level exceedance. That's what pushed us up into having to start replacing 7% of our service lines per year. 2021, that required 2 different rounds of sampling that we had to do. In both instances, we came in at 8 parts per billion and 11 parts per billion for our 90th percentiles. And then this year, last week, we did get our validation by the state of Michigan. Our round of sampling that we conducted in 2022, our 90th percentile value was 11 parts per billion. So in the last 2 years, since our lead action level exceedance, we haven't had another one that just requires us to do a little bit more. So based on that preliminary distribution systems inventory, we're required to replace 7% or 413 lead service lines per year. This year, for 2022, we actually had the full calendar year in order to complete that 413 requirement. We were able to complete 10% of our service lines. We replaced 611 lead service lines this year. And then we're working on finalizing our reports to ship that off to the state of Michigan so they can validate what it is that we did out in the field. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Jeffrey Weeks, our project manager, and he'll kind of discuss the replacements since he's the one that does all the scheduling, manages the contractor, and does the day-to-day oversight of our lead service line replacement program.
All right, let's do it. I'm Jeffrey Weeks. Hi, nice to see all of you. So it's one thing to say we're going to replace lead and galvanized, but to the practical person that doesn't have experience in it, I thought I'd bring a show and tell. Remember kindergarten? Here we go. So, this, my friends, is lead. We know this because it's a soft malleable metal, but this bulge really gives it away. 100 years ago, 80 years ago, they wrapped 2 pieces of lead in more lead, more or less, creating what you see here. This is a galvanized piece right here. This is also our enemy. Now, what galvanized does, you're welcome to, can't see it, but it really holds on to particulates and sediment in the water. So we may have a 1-inch line in these homes, but really after so much time, they're getting like half an inch worth of water. Restricting flow, it really holds on to the leaching lead. So galvanized bad, lead bad. Let's look at another one. I'm I'm really fun at parties at this point in my life. Really sidle up to me. People really want to talk about in-home metals and undergrounds. I can't wait to get my next one. This is just another one. I brought a bunch for no reason. I cleaned them all off because I didn't want to touch it. So here's what we got. The same thing. Obviously, the valve here is falling off. So let's get to the good stuff. So when that's replaced, I know you're all waiting with bated breath. What takes its place? Beautiful 1-inch copper. So this one right here was removed from a home. We had to make an adjustment. So you've got the beautiful 1-inch copper that comes in from the curb stop and from the water main. You have a real nice quarter-turn valve here to shut it off. This part right here would go to the meter. So this is what they're getting for the money that we're using. Almost done, but I know we're all having fun. What does lead look like underground? Well, one, I'm not very strong, so very heavy. This is lead pulled from the ground. Again, malleable. This is what we're pulling out of the ground. And then we are replacing it, again, under the ground where it can't be seen with the 1-inch copper, which again, we stretch and bend to fit our needs. Every home is different. It's like putting a puzzle together because all of our homes are different, every single one. We find lead on one side of the curb stop but not the other. We find short pieces of lead. Like I said, it's a puzzle. So that's what I do on the day-to-day. Dan kind of outlined what I actually do. A lot of phone calls, just like everyone. A lot of setting up appointments, scheduling, all that good stuff. I guess that's the job. So there you go. If you need me, I'll be getting lead out of the ground. Did you want me to put this slide into? Am I just scrolling down here? Well, I can get lead out of the ground, but clearly I can't click over. Dan? Oh, that arrow. Perfect. So here we have a map, obviously. So 2021, purple. You can see that, 2022 red. Now what we intend to do in 2023, we have about 673 that we're going to do hopefully in 2023. Now they're not all going to have lead, but they're right there in the blue showing what streets tie into our capital projects. Dan already talked about that. So slowly but surely, and working hand in hand with Dan nonstop every single day, we anticipate probably a 10-year time frame here instead of the state's 20 years to get all the lead out. So when we come and see you next year, we'll have a bunch more little dots out there for you to not know what home they are, but they all identify with an actual address. Here we go, we're going to push the arrow. We try and stay ahead with the scheduling, and Andrea over there, Dan, great resources, we work together really well. And the biggest problem that I face is that some people don't respond to the access agreements that are mailed, and that's unfortunate because at this point we know by the age of their home, the age of the water main, we can safely say we're getting better at it. Nothing's certain, but I know that they have lead. We know that they have lead, and so we try and get them all. Try and stay ahead of the contractor. 3 weeks is generally our time frame. They're doing 5 and 6 a day. It's a great contractor in all seriousness. I think we're very lucky to have him. Gustafson, horizontal direction, really good for us. Yeah, and it says right here, full replacement, so from the water main to the water meter, 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours. That's 674, well, that's right in front of me. And then moving forward, another round of funding, hopefully, so we can keep this going. Because like I said, we're starting to get pretty good at knowing the homes that do have lead, and we want to get that out. 1,166 lead service lines have been replaced. About 560 copper service lines, being that we went through the process of identifying and found only copper, so that's great. People are leading a great life. 17% of the service lines in our system, and about $6 million.
And then this year, the one thing that we will get heavy into, in 2022, we were awarded a $400,000 grant from the state of Michigan, a drinking water asset management grant. This January, we're actually getting to work in doing complete service line verifications on a random sample of homes within the city of Ferndale. So we are taking a random sample out of all the properties in the city of Ferndale of 363 properties to go and do a full service line verification on that. That is going into the property, verifying the material on the inside. That's digging up the curb stop, verifying the material type on both sides of the curb stop. And then with that, what we'll be doing is running a statistical analysis based on the property's attributes, the age of the home, the material type, the age of our water main, when it was built, and we will be applying that across the city of Ferndale so we can get a idea with fairly high confidence as to the makeup of all the properties in the city of Ferndale. That'll help go towards submitting our final distribution system materials inventory that's due to the state in 2025. So right now we're getting to work on that, and then we should have that fully completed hopefully in early summer, because we're not doing much excavating right now. We're really trying to focus on getting in the homes because it's really the most difficult part at the end of the day. So we're really looking forward to comparing the information that we gain from this program based on what we've seen out in the field in 2021 and 2022, and I think it'll really give us a good picture and be able to say, okay, you know, if this house was built in 1948, then X should hold true. We do have a few streets that are outliers based on kind of what we're seeing out there, which is a good thing. That just means we're not having to actually replace lead service lines. We're coming across copper that we actually didn't think we would come across. So overall, you know, on this presentation, there is resources and information regarding lead service lines on the city's website, through Oakland County Health Department, and with the state of Michigan. At the end of the day, for those properties where we have not come by, we have not replaced that lead service line, there is some things that you can do. One important thing that most people don't know is up until 2014, faucets could be made with some lead materials. So if you do have older faucets in the property, swapping those out if you do have the means is a good idea. Running your cold water, so if you wake up in the morning after going to sleep for the evening, run that cold water for a few minutes. What that's going to do, it's going to flush out any of that stagnant water that's been sitting in the lines. You're going to be pulling directly out of our water main, which those are made of iron. You can use a ANSI standard 53 water filter. Those are rated for lead reduction. And then also cleaning the aerators on the sinks that you're using for your drinking water. And those aerators are the small piece at the end of the faucet where the water is actually coming out of. You can unscrew those. There's a small screen. Unscrew that, clean out that screen. That screen will collect small particulates that are in the pipes and so on. And that's something you're going to want to do every couple months, once a quarter or something like that, in terms of cleaning out the aerators. And then in addition to the aerators, just use the water filters as they're directed on the packaging. And that's all we have. We'll take any questions if you have those.
The chair, thank you for the presentation. And I would just add that for households that are drinking filtered water, like mine has been for the last few years, I didn't even think about this for a while, but make sure that you're using fluoride, especially if you have a little one in the house, a fluoride rinse, because you're not getting it from your water. It's getting filtered out. But the questions I had are, the most common questions that I get from residents are, how do I find out if I have a lead service line? And what's involved, like how much of my yard gets ripped up when the line gets replaced?
So one of the best ways to actually walk yourself through how do I know if I have a lead service line, on our webpage dedicated to information on lead service line replacement program, there's a link that takes you to a tool that NPR put together that walks you through step by step on what to do to try and understand whether or not you do have a lead service line. If residents are finding that difficult, you can submit a request on the city's webpage as well. You send us a picture, we can let you know right then and there. We may ask for an additional picture so we can see, or we'll just, our water service tech, we'll stop by and be able to say, you know what, you have a lead service line. If you need some more information in terms of what to do, we can supply that as well. For the work that we're doing, as long as everything goes well and we don't run into anything crazy, which sometimes it is, typically it's about a 5 by 5 foot hole that we're digging. Usually that's just on the property, private property side of the sidewalk. Sometimes that's in between the sidewalk and the right of way, but roughly about 5 by 5 foot hole. And then in terms of if we do have to replace on going into the water meter, it's roughly a 1 by 1 foot hole that we're putting into the foundation. Sometimes we're coming through the wall, so if you look at this photo right here, where that pipe's coming through the wall, that's as much disturbance as we're going to make.
Through the chair, on the topic of residents knowing if they have a lead service line, is the GIS interactive map still being updated?
Yes, that's being updated as we pull in update information. So typically, as we're going out, usually about once a week, whether it's random, swapping out a water meter, we'll double check that information, update that at that time, but in short, yes.
Chair, I have a couple questions. So except for, some part of December where the weather was really, really bad, for the most part, we've had pretty decent weather. Are we doing any work through winter, or when will work resume?
So through winter, what Jeff will be doing is he'll be lining up our schedule. So right now, we're not slated to resume work again until first week of March is when we're going to get back into it. That just gives us time to get all our notifications out, which we'll be shipping those out soon. And then basically give us the entire month of February to start building on a schedule.
And so when would residents, if we're going to start resuming work in March, when would residents that are going to be resuming work in March be contacted? Is that going to be happening over the next couple of weeks?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yeah. Yep, so at this time we finalize the properties that we're going to be going and doing replacements at for 2023, and then we'll be getting our notices out.
Okay. So Jeff had mentioned that, in some instances you could have galvanized and lead pipe underground, as well as maybe some copper. What are we, when we have a variety of that, are we replacing everything clean, or are we just replacing just the lead, or are we replacing the lead and the galvanized? What?
So the way what the state requires is any galvanized that was previously connected to lead is required to be replaced,
okay,
because it can retain that particulate. So we're replacing all of it. If, let's say, we come across a line that is, for some reason, lead, then a bit of copper, then it's switching over to galvanized, it's easier to replace the entire service line. And that's what we've been doing, is just replacing the entire service line.
Okay. But only up to the meter. So if, for example, I know in my house I still have some galvanized pipe in my basement, it's not all been replaced with copper. Once that copper has been replaced from the street to my meter, I will still have issues with the potential lead remnants that are within my galvanized pipes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we do our water sampling, that's why we do what they call a 1st and a 5th liter draw. That's, in theory, with that 1st liter, we're testing the water that's in the house's plumbing. And then with that 5th liter of water, we're testing the water that's in the service line itself.
And then my next question may actually be for Jeff. So what questions are most commonly asked by residents? When you reach out to them, you've talked to over 1,000, plus residents. What's the most common questions that they're asking, and what are your responses to those most common questions?
Yes, and we've already touched on some of them. how much of my yard will be disturbed? And Dan hit it right in the head. It's a 5 by 5 square foot hole. And then, I've been in so many basements. I just go in people's basements, is what I do. So I know ahead of time with tons of pictures that are uploaded to the GIS, I know what I'm working with. And so some people have basements that are unfinished, partially finished, and some really nice mahogany bars down there. And it is sharp, So we need to dance around all of that. So the question is, what's going to be disturbed down here? I've got carpeting, but we have some autonomy in what we do within the replacement to come through a wall where it may have come through a floor before, depending on what we're looking at there, or the reverse. Did it come through the wall? Perhaps it's more prudent to come through the floor. Not trying to destroy anybody's finished basement, not trying to destroy anyone's basement at all. And it's not. I have 2,000 photos to show you. How much time do you have? But we really go around anything we run into. So to answer your question, the outside, what's going to be disturbed, and the inside, what's going to be disturbed. So those would be the most common questions.
Through the chair, I'll just add that I got some really good feedback from some homeowners where I guess you offered to move their meter a few feet to a more convenient location that really worked out better for them. So
yes,
sometimes it's a positive.
Sometimes in homes we find meters in the middle of the home. Doing what I do, I've seen it all. And that's not a very great place to have your water meter. So yes, sometimes we get the opportunity to help someone and move it to a corner of the basement or a different wall. So sometimes we can do those things.
Excellent, thank you.
If I may, through the chair. So I just wanted, just for you to kind of recap. So based on the various homes and where the lead lines were replaced, excuse me, where can homeowners find out what's left in their home? Is that also shown on the GIS?
So after the water meter?
After the replacement?
No. If someone wants to identify that, they would try and, I would also recommend the NPR tool. It's going to walk you through how to identify lead, how to identify copper, how to identify galvanized. In some instances, some properties probably have PEX, which is like a plastic water service lines. They could walk through that same tool to identify what it is that they have on their internal plumbing. And then the next best option is to just get your water tested. But typically what we recommend is, don't go to one of the larger big box home improvement stores and pick up a at-home test that you mail in. It's best to go to Oakland County Health Department because they do have a state certified lab for lead and copper testing. They're going to ask for a 1st and 5th liter lead and copper kit. I think it's $23. You'll go to the health department, they have an office over in Southfield. Pick it up, take your samples, drop it back off, and typically they're turning around those results in a couple of weeks, depending on how much they got going on at that time. If, let's say you were to go take your water sample and you come back and it's showing, you submit to the health department showing that you've exceeded the lead action level and you're not on a replacement for 2023, as long as you provide that documentation to us, that it's a state certified lab, it's shown that you had an action level exceedance, we will move that around in our replacement schedule and pull you up. We kind of deem that as an emergency, as with the leaks. So that's the two ways that we kind of move around our schedule in order to help property owners out and also just kind of protect against health and safety for those in the household.
Thanks, Dan. I don't have any questions, but I do want to say that Jeff and DPW, you've been giving exceptional customer service. It's not often that we get praise from residents, and I think we've received more emails praising the experience residents, homeowners are having with DPW and Jeff directly, and it is just really been heartwarming and wonderful to hear. Because getting your lead lines replaced is stressful. You do have to be home. You do have to interrupt your day. And so I just wanted to say thank you so much for doing what you're doing and building this amazing expertise, not only in the city of Ferndale of how to do this, but I think how to do this accelerated for other cities who are prioritizing public health for lead line replacement. So I praise, beyond praise.
Well, thank you. It's really Jeff and Gustafson are, like he said, we really do have a really good contractor in town. They're very attentive. If something pops up, a small issue pops up after the fact, we're there within 24 hours of that phone call. We went another full year without anyone submitting a claim for property damage. So that makes 2 years of no claims. For property damage, Jeff's been doing a great job. He's, at this point, he's talked to almost 2,000 of our residents. We've been in 2,000 homes, and, we're looking to do 600 some next year. We're still going to keep moving at our accelerated pace. The one nice thing right now, we have spent approximately $6 million in total on our lead service line replacement program under our drinking water revolving loan fund. When we originally put that plan together, we allocated $8 million towards service line replacements, $2 million towards verification. We haven't been spending as much on verification. The one really cool thing is we estimated that we would replace roughly, I think it was 1,256 lead service lines with those dollars. And so far we've replaced 1,166 lead service lines. So we're actually going to replace quite a bit more than what we originally anticipated. Part of that's because we've been replacing partials versus fulls and so on. But we're still going to do quite a bit more with the dollars that we had through this funding than what we originally anticipated. So, we're just looking forward to getting started, and we're working through our project plan right now for another submittal for a drinking water revolving loan fund. So we can just continue heavy-handed, and as long as that funding's available, it is doable to get all these knocked out within a decade. So everything holds true. In 8 years we'll not be replacing lead service lines anymore. It'll be big.
Well, it's obvious that you are really practicing continuous improvement, which is something that we value with our city administration. So thank you for doing that and finding more efficiencies.
Yeah, no. And thank you for approving us for additional funding. So that's why we're able to do the amount of work that we're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. And if anybody's like me who has not gotten their lead tested, I need to do that. I've been tasked with it in my household, and I haven't done it. So this is just a reminder that I need to get it done. So I encourage everybody else who hasn't had their water tested, lead line tested, to call the Oakland County Helpline. All right. So that concludes, we have one more presentation, and this was an add-on, and it's 4D, which is the Ferndale Housing Commission, and our Executive Director, Heather Van Pooker.
Well, thank you so much for adding me impromptu. I just wanted to stop by tonight to offer council and the community my sincerest gratitude for the opportunity to serve this community and the Ferndale Housing Commission for almost 7 years now. And to let you know that I have accepted an outstanding new position at Oakland County, and I will be leaving. My last day is my January board meeting, which is January 23rd. Will be our annual meeting and our board meeting on the 23rd, and then I'll start my new position on the 24th. I was able in December to let my board know, my residents know, my staff know, and we are working diligently on a great transition plan. So I keep saying, if I've done my job correctly, no one should notice that I'm gone. So I hope that holds true. I do think that I'm leaving the commission in a better place than I found it, and certainly well equipped to move forward with the plans and the progress that are underway. We have got a great strategic plan set for 2023, and the board is ready to move on that. The position posting went live on Friday. The city is assisting us, and we're very grateful for that, in the executive search for the next executive director. So if any member of council or the community know of anyone who may be interested in the position or be able to push that information out, we would really appreciate it. It's a great opportunity for somebody who's looking to make outstanding change and progress within this community. There's just so much opportunity to do great stuff with the Ferndale Housing Commission. So I wanted to thank you all and the community and say goodbye. It was definitely a tough decision, but one that's great for me personally and professionally. And I leave you all in great hands with an outstanding commission and very well-seasoned staff. And I just look forward to watching from the sidelines now all the great things that are going to come for Ferndale Housing Commission. So thank you all.
Thank you, Heather. You are going to be sorely missed. And, you know, when I look back when you were hired, you may not have known what type of cleanup aisle 5. I say that jokingly now, but the residents really needed someone to care for them in a way that hasn't been done before by the previous executive director. And I am so confident that you've positioned the Ferndale Housing Commission for very long-term success because of your leadership and how you treat people with kindness and compassion, and really have brought the organization up to the values of this city, and put in procedures and processes in place. And I can't imagine how our Housing Commission residents would have survived the pandemic without you. So just really honored to have worked with you and collaborated with you, and that you've represented the community and the residents so honorably. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you all, and thank you to the community. And I'll miss everyone truly and dearly. Thank you.
Thank you. Best of luck on your new endeavors. I will still text you. All right, so now we are moving on to call the audience. We set aside 30 minutes for have residents and visitors speak on any topic they would like to talk about. We ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes, and we have a nice mindfulness clock that our staff run. So if there's anybody who would like to say something tonight, I encourage you to come up to the podium and state your name clearly. And I am, come on, it's the first of the year, you can be the first one. All right, I'm not seeing anybody for public comment this evening, so I'm going to move on and go to our next agenda item, which is consent agenda. And I typically read these out loud, and council chooses what they would like to do afterwards. So first up, 7A, approval of the December 19th, 2022 meeting minutes. 7B was removed and tabled. 7C, approval to accept the report of the public facility camera location for Geary Park in accordance with the public surveillance ordinance requirements. 7D, approval to appoint Councilmember Leaks May to the Ordinance Committee and Councilmember Mikulski to the Board of Zoning Appeals as council liaisons. 7E, approval of appointments and reappointments to the city boards and commissions. 7F, approval of bills and payrolls as submitted by the Finance Director and subject to review by the Council Finance Committee. It's a short one tonight. What is the pleasure of council?
Move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Support.
Moved by James and supported by Polika.
James,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
Leaks May,
Yes.
Mikulski,
Yes.
Piana.
Yes. All right, and next up is our regular agenda, and we only have one item tonight, is 8A, in consideration of a deficit elimination plan resolution for the auto parking fund.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Please give me one moment while I transition. Okay. Thank you, Is the mayor? Did the mayor step up?
She does.
I will grant a 1-minute recess.
You can start.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she mumbled that she'd be right back.
Gotcha. Okay. I am here this evening to provide a presentation that's connected to the year-end audit results that were presented to council in December. I will be giving the parking context and business context of the presentation. The finance director, Phil Whitfield, who's responsible for filing the deficit elimination plan, is going to speak to the accounting jargon that I'm less in tune with. And Bruce Campbell actually is unavailable this evening. He's our parking director with Reef Parking, who oversees Park Ferndale downtown. But our deputy director, Paul Hogan, is here. And if there's any follow-up questions on activity or actual trends in the downtown as it relates to parking, Paul can speak to that. He helped crunch the numbers on the back end. So per the state, I will begin to set the backdrop, but the audit revealed a operating deficit in the parking fund that is directly connected to activity or inactivity since the pandemic onset in March 2020. We have put together a chart here to kind of help illustrate the impacts on the actual operations in fiscal year 1920, which is when the pandemic initially hit and impacted our downtown in March 2020. That is the third column. If you can see that, I know the viewers in the audience probably can't read that. What you see is the first year being fiscal year 17 and 18, and that is really when we're in pre-construction mode of the dot. We're beginning to take on some kind of project expenses. Revenues are down because we've taken now off Lot 6. And you can see we're in construction activity in 18 and 19. And revenue activity is actually pretty stable. The red line is our expenses. The green line is the revenue for the system. And then the dotted line is the pro forma that was done, that council adopted. That was the basis for the parking rate extension at that time, and then post-construction with the dot. You can actually see that our actual revenues were outpacing the pro forma that was done by our consultant prior to the pandemic. And in the pandemic, you see a 45% decrease in revenues that occurred for that first fiscal year, and a 40% increase in expenses that occurred for the parking fund concurrently. So two directions going opposite ways. Some of the operating factors on the revenue side, parking system fees were suspended per the pandemic for the first 4 months after the closures were began in March 2020. Health restrictions impacted our downtown businesses activity, and that actually was sustained for well, we're still seeing impacts of the activity, but the actual health restrictions were in place through December 2021, going into January 22. The MEDC actually canceled the incentives. We had secured an incentive package from the state towards the development of the office space on the dot, as well as the affordable housing in the residential district. After the pandemic protocols were enacted in March 2020, the state actually canceled all incentives deals that were done. And at that point, that led to a restructuring of our development agreement with the developer for the dot. You also see the dot retail space actually being impacted quite significantly by this. We were unable to fulfill the tenant spaces until actually we had our first opening this fall. And as of now, 3 out of 4 spaces are leased up, and 1 is being recruited right now as well. We actually celebrated the ribbon cutting for one of the spaces this evening, prior to council meeting. Downtown parking activity remains below the pre-pandemic levels still in our downtown, but we are seeing increases that we can speak to if council has follow-ups. On the expense side, it was kind of a perfect storm. As those revenues are being impacted, we actually begin to see the first debt payment on the dot happening while we're still under construction, as construction is suspended by the state. So we actually have to start paying increased debt service without any activity on the revenue side coming in. Construction actually ends up being suspended for about 3 months, and that increases our total final bill of construction. We also see the actual delays of the completion of the project by 7 months, largely due to the state's closure of construction activities, but also due to other pandemic protocols, labor issues, and then supply issues that ultimately just drag the process out till December when it opens. Prior to the pandemic, we were on pace to open the parking structure in June 2020. So that brings us to Phil's slide. This is the summary of options that were presented by the state of Michigan. So the state of Michigan does an annual audit on all government and proprietary accounts that we have, or enterprise accounts. The parking fund is an enterprise account, which means its revenues and operating expenses are based on user activity, not general fund tax dollars. So the parking system actually is audited separately, and during their audit, they've summarized the impacts of our operating system. They kind of concluded with the presentation. Once we filed with the audit, we are required to submit a deficit elimination plan for the enterprise fund. And I will let Phil walk you through the 2 options that the state presents for the city to comply with.
Good evening, everybody. As the slide details, there are 2 ways that the state allows us to eliminate the deficit. The first, which is option 1, is just to look at our current assets versus our current liabilities to see what our cash position is at the end of the year. And so when the audit was completed, our current assets versus current liabilities had a deficit of $471,988. When you're looking at the option 2, it takes into account everything, long-term debt, depreciation, all the bonds payable. And so according to our audit, we had $2,473,602 in debt for the overall, and that's the overall net position of the auto parking fund. To, I guess, bring it down in simpler terms, the way that the state approaches deficits in any fund that's outside of the local municipalities' general fund is to kind of level the playing field. And so what they do is when you're looking at any type of deficit, whether it be your overall net position or if you're just looking at assets versus liabilities, they're looking to see what it would be if it was all basically general fund. So this is an exercise to kind of level the playing field. They put together a formula that actually eliminates the current portion of long-term debt so that you'd have a smaller number to work with. And so after going through that exercise, we came up with the 2 amounts, and the state requires us to reduce or eliminate the smaller of the 2. And so we put together a plan to eliminate the $471,988. Now, best practice would be to eliminate everything, but with an elimination plan, the state only allows you 5 years. And knowing that it is long-term debt included in option 2, that is the reason why we wouldn't be going that route, because we wouldn't have enough time to eliminate the 2.4 over the next 5 years. But the 471 is something that is doable and is allowed by the state. And so that's the approach. That's the option that we're going to go with or approach.
Thank you, Phil. And for context, the depreciation in option 2 accounts for about 50% of that figure. The depreciation isn't factored into option 1. So the deficit, according to the state, this plan must be updated annually. So after the audit in December and January, until the deficit is offset, we'll have to give a progress update and a resolution next year, and you'll see positive progress on the plan next year as we're going to present now. So switching sections, the minute that we had indicators from the auditors in December, I asked Reef Parking to give me an analysis of the current system, current trends going back 12 months, so we can better understand how the activity is recovering and how the revenue is recovering moving forward, to allow us to submit a plan to the state, because the state does require an actual plan of intention. So the approach that they took was to spread revenue increases across the system on a biannual basis. So on the parking rate side of things, in the yellow, you'll see that arrow shows you our current fiscal year. We're in fiscal year 23. Last year, council actually proactively adopted a change to the rates, increasing them from $1 to $1.50 on street, then $1 to an hour, $1.25 off street for the surface lots. That, because that was done last year and enacted July 1, their recommendation is to not increase those this year and to wait for an increase in fiscal 25. You're looking at an approximate 6% increase on street and an 8% increase in off street. We do have a system study that still puts us in the middle of the pack with rates, even with that increase. For the DOT, their hourly recommendation would be an 8% increase in fiscal 25 as well. So fiscal 24, which begins July 1, will not be, you'll see no change in rates. That's the proposal. For parking permits, they haven't been touched. And so parking permits would be the first function that would be recommended for increasing this fiscal year. So this would be in place this July 1. And so the DOT monthly parking permits, which are really new because the system just opened, are still competitive within the region, and that's still less than our neighbors up in Royal Oak and Birmingham. So we're still very competitive from a market perspective in the DOT in terms of covered protected parking. On the municipal side, which is the open off-street side, downtown employee permits actually haven't been, the price hasn't adjusted in over 12 years. So what they're proposing is simply to increase it. It is by 25%, so a $20 permit increases to $25 permits. And those are for the downtown employees lots. And then there's a correlated fee. We have 3 months and 1 year permits as well. Those are the significant highlights for permit revenue adjustments. And you'll see that first change is in effect in fiscal 24. And then again, you notice it's not in effect again until 26. So those rates will change also 2 years. Third area, which is really the third revenue center for the system, is enforcement. So the fee for expired meters is recommended to go to 20, and prohibited parking is recommended to go to 50. Prohibited parking is a residential parking violation. That's a good example of that. A fire hydrant violation be prohibited parking. So it's non-meter related enforcement. The estimated impact based on the existing activities. So they actually do see the real-time activity in our software. So this is all based on actual data that we're seeing in the system. Based on the data, this number has been entered into our finance software, and we can project an increase in revenues that will be proactively addressing the deficit per the deficit elimination plan. This number is shown in the next slide. It's actually in the resolution. And so I'll again just allow Phil to walk through his table. This is the resolution that he drafted for the statute, and you can see the progress towards the deficit.
As Joe noted, we worked with REEF to get real-time estimates because we had to kind of go through both projected revenues as well as projected expenditures for the next 5 years, just for the purposes of the plan. And what you see on the screen is alluding to the earlier amount when we went with option A, or option 1 that was on the slide, which is a $471,988. That's going to be our starting point for our elimination plan. And so we add in the revenues that we expect based off of the previous slide, and then we factor in our expenditures for the next 5 years. And so you'll see the progression over the next 5 years. But what I want to bring to, couple things I want to bring to everybody's attention. First, when we include expenditures, we are including depreciation. As some of you may know, depreciation is a non-cash item. And so for the purposes of a fund balance or a cash balance, it doesn't factor in because there's no cash being moved. It's a book entry. And so and you'll see on the table where we have expenditures, including depreciation, and then we back the depreciation out for the next 5 years. And so at the end of this fiscal year, just June 30th, if we hit the numbers that we're projecting, we'll still have a deficit, but it will be significantly smaller than the deficit we started with. And so we carry that to the beginning of 2024, and based on the projected revenues and expenditures for that year, we should be exiting the deficit elimination plan at the end in June 30th, 2024, or if not before, depending on how close we come to hitting our projections. So that gives us significant cushion, because that means we'll be coming out of it in the second year. And so at that point, we will begin to start building that parking fund from an asset liability standpoint. And so when we submit this to the state, they still have to go through it and make sure that we dotted all our I's and crossed all our T's. And they'll certify our elimination plan, and then we'll just have to update them again after the next annual audit. And so that's kind of our game plan. That's the direction that we're going in. And again, we spent a significant amount of time looking at both the revenues and expenditures. So in essence, parking did their triannual budget early, because we had to kind of get these numbers ready to submit to the state. And so because they're going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that what we're presenting is feasible. And I do believe it is. So we are, like I said, projected to come out of it at June 30th, 2024, if not before. But we'll have an update at the end of the audit for this fiscal year.
Thank you, Phil. We're also looking at other opportunities. One of those opportunities that parking strongly wants to do, because it's a service enhancement as well, as expand the payment options by incorporating an Apple and Google Pay. We're working with our vendors to do that, but that is becoming kind of more of a trend where you go, for example, into the dot and you'll see a QR code that'll actually enable you to just pay via text, Apple Pay or Google Pay. We just need to work with our vendors to unlock that opportunity. Survey and RPC expansion. This is based on actual user feedback from our enforcement officers, but also with the residents who live on there. There could be an interest in expansion of that enforcement of that street. So that's a survey that I think we should do. Also a service enhancement that could benefit all parties. Conduct a utilization study. So there's a lot of change within the downtown area. So it's something to study, to consider what parking demand, if any, is out there that could be improved by a level of management, curb management.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have one question. When was the last parking study conducted? It was to support the development of the DOT, but now, is that like 7 years old?
It would have been 2017, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And I'm still...
Or 5 years.
I'm still concerned a little bit about the truth behind the data we would get today, because the activity is not where it should be still. Our business hours still aren't operating for full hours, pre-pandemic hours. We have several businesses that still close it. So many don't even open on Mondays or Tuesdays because of labor challenges. And because of those challenges, several are still closing, at 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. rather than their normal operating hours. And that definitely impacts activity. So I'm concerned right now how whether the study would give us biased results or not. But I will say, with our enforcement vehicle that has license plate recognition, LPR, what it actually can do is just take data point studies per time, and so we can start to see activity just based on it driving by the on-street spaces. It can just get essentially pings, and those pings equal a data point. And so that's something that Bruce said he can do, and that's what he's suggesting, is to use the technology rather than pay a firm to do that until we think we have more stable downtown. Getting a lot of feedback from the state and industry that the best practice for EV charging, now we only have 9 stations, but we charge based on the same metered rate, an hourly fee, would be to shift that towards per kilowatt hour. So that's something that Park Ferndale's asked me to study, but he's getting industry feedback, and I'm getting the same feedback from the state, that is becoming the policy trend, the best practice trend. And actually, I just saw a press release from Ann Arbor who's converted to a kilowatt hour as well. And then be bullish about lowering our annual credit card processing fees. It's an intermediary fee that's unfortunately just a part of the system. We can't emphasize negotiation with our merchant processors to try to lower that because the shift away from cash has been permanent. I think we're well over 70% card versus cash now. So I think that's an opportunity to hit on the expense side. And then we've also will be scrutinizing capital projects. I've already deferred a capital project with a couple of our lots maintenance, but that is not a long-term prospect. We've actually, the worst thing that we could recommend is to disinvest in the system, especially the system that we've just purchased. So I don't want to strike out operating capital budget recommendations from this, so I'm trying to preserve that as much as we can to make sure that our assets remain in good standing. So the next steps, the first step, according to the resolution, we have 30 days from the filing to submit the plan to council, and the plan must be submitted via council resolution, and that's what we're doing here tonight. In February, you're going to see a second quarter budget adjustment from all departments. This will include the enterprise fund for the auto parking fund. This will be essentially just a progress update from us. You'll see our revenue and expense forecast for the system, so we'll have a good understanding about where we're trending today. And you can contrast that against a year-to-date figure from last year. And March would be, should council execute these recommendations, that's when the fee schedule gets updated, and March is part of the annual budget process. And then, of course, the fiscal year-end 24 through 26 triennial budget, council projects a 3-year budget but allocates a 1 year. That is presented to council in April. And with that, Phil and I can take any questions. He will handle all finance questions. And let me know if there's any follow-up questions for reef parking. Paul Hogan is here to support that.
If I may, through the chair. So just with just neighboring communities that also have a parking structure, have you noticed that this is the kind of the same trend with other communities that have them, Birmingham, Royal Oak, a decrease in revenue that...
Yeah, the trends are persistent across all systems. As a matter of fact, during last year when we considered the rate increase, Ann Arbor increased theirs to $2.10 because they took such a revenue hit. They still have a lot of debt for their parking debts that they had to increase their revenues by. But I will say there is no apples to apples. What makes us unique is that our debt service is so fresh. We're paying all interest right now and very little principal. It was the year 1 of our debt payment, and we lost almost all operating revenues during that first year. So for us, Birmingham isn't paying any new debt. Their debts are older and possibly retired on the debt side. So our equation is more complex than others. But I will say, yeah, from a revenue standpoint, all operations, from my colleagues' perspective, who have a parking system, which aren't that many in the metro area, all significantly impacted.
My question is about the deficit plan as presented today and the potential for increase of usage, right? Usage is still down, so revenue's down, and we're increasing some fees in order to close the deficit gap. Future development of the housing units on the side of the building, I call it Lego piece number 2. Lego piece number 1 is the retail and the parking deck. Rosie O'Grady's is approved for development into 2 new restaurants as well as 30 new units? 28, right? So the demand for parking will increase. That project are probably a year and a half out, as well as the housing. So in the event that parking usage goes back to pre-pandemic levels as planned would there be any changes to like the revenue side where we wouldn't have to increase anymore? We would just status quo, and the deficit plan, we wouldn't have to increase anymore because the usage would go up and the deficit would be coming down based upon usage, not rate increases. Did I clearly state that?
I think that's why the state requires the annual update. So in
Okay.
January, if our deficit's eliminated, the plan is eliminated. We're no longer, the state, I believe they would file that as a closed account, essentially. And then, we will still have to consider the long-term unrestricted net position. Yes, that does calculate depreciation, but the auditors are going to tell us the best practice is to factor in depreciation as a conservative way to build back your cash position. So the elimination plan would be closed. We could certainly, yes, hopefully we're earning revenues through a healthy, successful downtown that's generating activity again.
Okay. So hypothetically, a year from now, year and a half from now, we could be having a much different conversation.
Correct.
Right? Potentially, on the flip side too, we could be in a more difficult situation given the new strain of COVID XBB.1.5. So we are still impacted by health issues in terms of supporting our business community. So we're not out of the woods yet for supporting our businesses and paying for municipal assets that council invested in to support the business community. Okay.
If I may, through the chair, can you touch upon, just so it's known, what happens if we don't show any, I'm not saying that we'll do this, but if we don't show any signs of improvement, what happens at the state level after the first year? If we don't, okay.
After the first year, there wouldn't be anything. We would have to adjust our plan for the remaining 4 years. But if after the 4 years, if say we still are in a deficit position, then the state will give us instructions on how. They'll tell us how they want us to eliminate the deficit at that point. But we have 5 years to work our plan. And so if after the first year, second year, we're still in a deficit position, we still have 3 more years to come out of that deficit position. And then the state will come in and make recommendations as far as.
Okay. So it's sort of like a grace period for us to figure it out before they come in and take over? Right. Okay. Okay.
Sure. And just like the mayor was alluding to or identified, we're not the only community that is experiencing this. And other communities are experiencing this for other reasons, for other projects. I'm not, we use Royal Oak as an example. I'm not saying Royal Oak has an issue, but they just invested, multi-million dollars in all new buildings. All of that is new funding. Other communities that have done that are experiencing what we're experiencing here. It was just, unfortunately, a bad timing to build a new parking structure in Ferndale. But we didn't know that 3 years ago. Well, 5 years ago.
Yeah, through the chair, all these systems too have different, as we have, there's no apples to apples on the expense side, the same on the revenue side. Some communities are able to offset some of these losses with ARPA. The city of Ferndale is not in that position. So there's, it really is on a case-by-case basis what cities can do and how they could recover.
Well, and that's very true. I mean, ARPA was designed to help communities that find themselves in this situation.
Through the chair, I have just a very ignorant accounting question. On the topic of depreciation, are we, in terms of things that we're depreciating, is it building plus the parking system itself, like the meters and the vehicles and all of that?
We're depreciating the building definitely, but also any tangible asset is part of that depreciation expense that we do annually. So the answer is yes, the buildings as well are included.
Okay. And then a follow-up to that, what's the useful lifespan that we're depreciating over for the building itself?
I believe it's 25 years, but I'd have to double check that, but I believe it's 25 years.
Okay, thank you.
I would also add, there was a ribbon cutting for My Sweet Salons Day, and there are 39 businesses in there. So I suspect we'll see an uptick in usage as well after today.
Yes, and Reef Parking has expressed a significant uptick in dot activity this year. As a matter of fact, I think I saw the mid-year budget revenues, and we're I think about 10% ahead of where we ended last year. So that's a good sign. We do have a positive, healthy recovery downtown. We're still a great place to do business, but the recovery is just, it's going to take some time.
Sorry, through the chair. When you say last year, you're talking about at the end of last year's fiscal?
Yes.
Yes, at
Correct.
the end of June.
So we're outpacing projections at this time last year.
For the first 6 months of this fiscal period.
Correct.
Other questions from council? If not, we need I'm assuming you've concluded your presentation.
Concluded.
And that we've answered all of our questions. So we would need a motion to proceed.
Mayor, I move that we approve the deficit elimination plan resolution for auto parking as submitted by the city manager.
Or,
Moved by Leaks May and supported by Milkowski. Did you have a comment?
Well, actually, I still have a question. And maybe I missed it at all this. So, what is actually going to happen?
This will, well, Phil can speak to the state side, I can speak locally. So why don't you explain the finding
After
of
we
the state?
approve this
The
tonight?
money's got to come from somewhere. Where's the money coming from?
The
To solve our problem right now.
As Joe noted earlier, and as I had said earlier, we took a look at real-time numbers for our projected revenues. And so the money for the deficit plan is going to come from the increased activity or the increased revenues, because as Joe noted, we're roughly at the end of December at about 964,000 as far as revenue for permits as well as the kiosks. This time last year, we were at about 450 or 475, roughly in that neighborhood. So the trend is moving in the direction we wanted to move in. And so the assumption by us is that if we continue on this pace, even though we know that we had probably a high activity with the summer months or what have you, we have another summer, well, we have spring coming. But with the summer months, that's going to be an uptick as far as our actual revenue. But to answer your question, the money's going to come from the increased revenues, and then we are going to be looking at expenditures to make sure that we are keeping those as close to stagnant as possible.
So the money's going to be coming from the auto parking fund with the projected revenue over the next 6 months?
Correct.
Okay. So we're not being asked to borrow from the general fund. We're not asking to borrow money to cover expenses. This is
strictly self-sustaining.
Strictly an approval of a plan to cover a deficit should it appear at the end of the fiscal year.
Correct. Exclusively for the parking fund.
Okay.
I will clarify. You make a good point, so I want to make sure I go back to clarification. The revenues are going to be coming from activity trends, as we've discovered or discussed.
Activities within the auto parking fund.
Within the auto parking fund. And actually, a great, just really easy example of that is during the last 2 years of the pandemic, West Troy Street, the majority of the businesses were vacant. It wasn't just the dot that was vacant. There was a new office adjacent to the dot that actually had the same construction timeline that we did. They just finished construction in the spring of 2020, and their suites were empty for the last 2 years, but they're all filling up right now. So that's going to drive in new activity and new permit activity. So you're starting to see the businesses come back online on West Troy. At the time, Public House was closed for close to a year and a half. Almost all the restaurants adjacent to the dot were closed for the past several years. So we're starting to see that activity come online. So we're factoring in activity, but we're also factoring in the revenue recommendations that we're recommending in the resolution. So this March, with the fee schedule update, we are going to recommend council adopt the permit increases as the first revenue increase that we presented tonight. But yes, the increases are contained to the auto parking fund. I think that's the point you wanted to bring home.
Yes. I just want to make sure everyone's aware that this is all happening with the auto parking fund that.
No general fund.
Yes, it's not taxpayer money that we're going to be using to offset a balance, to do anything, so.
I appreciate your clarification on that. I think that helps, because this is a complex topic, a complex problem to problem solve in. And I think I go back again, this was an amenity that the business community asked the city to invest in to improve business to the business community. So who knew about the pandemic? That's still giving pain.
So if I may, through the chair, then this coming fiscal year will be really telling as to whether or not we're able to meet this deficit, and it could be taken care of before the 5 year.
Yeah, that's the plan.
All right, okay, all right.
I would like to add tangentially that the DDA Board of Directors has talked about improving the wayfinding, and there have been many comments that, it is difficult to find, the parking signs and direction in our downtown, not only from Woodward on the west side to the dot, but also from the east side to the dot. So I think that we will be taking a look at how to improve that over the next year. So, a tangential investment on signage that is needed, that can be helpful to, guiding not only to parking, but bus stops, a bike share, and all the other modes that are available. So, with that, we've got a motion on the floor. Any other comment from council? All right, let's go to vote.
Leaks May.
Yes.
Nikolsky.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Polika.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes. All right. Send positive energy to our business community. May they get more customers in 2023. So with that, we have concluded our regular agenda, and we are ready to go to call to council. And kicking us off is the city manager with department updates.
Thank you, Mayor. We will shift immediately into a lighter topic with a presentation from Emmanuel Johnson.
Much lighter.
Hi, Emmanuel.
Good evening, and a Happy New Year to everybody. I hope everybody had a great holiday season. Just a few quick updates from Parks and Recreation. The first thing is we have our Daddy-Daughter Dance upcoming on February 14th. It'll take place from 6 to 8 p.m. at Ferndale High School. Tickets are $15 until February 9th, at which time the tickets will go up to $20, and the registration for that is open now. You can find all of that on our registration website, as well as our Facebook page, where we have announced it as well. Other than that, we have you met Robert Birch earlier, our new deputy director. I want to make sure that everybody is also aware that we also welcomed in a new program specialist. His name is Matthew King. He comes to us by way of Detroit Arsenal, which is an after-school program in Detroit. And he will be handling the majority of our youth sports programs moving forward. Speaking of which, our youth soccer is now open for registration. Registration opened today, and it's filling up very fast. So we have leagues ranging from U4 to U14. U12 and U14 are travel leagues, and U4 and U6 are just coaches-only leagues. So that is available for registration now, and that's about it.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Next, our Director of Communication, Kurt Sokol, just a reminder about what's hitting your mailboxes.
Happy New Year, Council. Yeah, so I told you during the last meeting that the newsletter would be coming, and it is, in fact, already printed as we speak. I believe it was completed last week, so we should have them in mailboxes, maybe as early as the end of this week, but definitely next week for sure. So everybody keep an eye out. Sometimes they get stuck in little catalogs or news mailers. We've got plenty of information about snow, should we get any this year, as well as parks and recreation events and activities coming up, sports leagues. I'm sorry, I come from the UP. We should have a little bit more. And actually, I just want to point people's attention to the first and second pages, which now, this will be the second one, feature a short article from our city manager, Joe Gaucho. Kind of opens the door of City Hall and the city manager's office a little bit, talks about some of the things that we all do that help the city run, particularly some of the things that he's working on, and in this one talks about some upcoming ways that residents can get involved. So keep an eye out for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Please also get Fire Chief Robinson to give a shout out to the wonderful ceremony we got to observe earlier this evening.
Yeah, it's very exciting with everything that we've been going through as a department, and it's such an amazing department. But to swear in 3 new firefighters tonight was awesome. So we're definitely, filling those vacancies, and I can't thank Ferndale PD enough and HR for all the support they've given us for us to be able to make this happen and get this, the candidates in, attract, and all the support from the city administration and city council for us to be such a great department, for the talent to want to come work here. And just so everybody knows, we actually have the reputation with other fire departments that this is the place to work. When I talk to other fire chiefs, they're telling people, yeah, Ferndale Fire Department is a good place to work. So that's an amazing badge of honor that we should wear with pride. But I also want to just touch as we go into winter. I feel like we had our white Christmas and we went straight back to spring. But if winter does come back around, remind people of some really important safety things. When you're clearing your driveway with snow, try not to bury your fire hydrants, because if there is an emergency and we need that water supply, you don't want us to waste time trying to dig out the fire hydrant to get the water we need to put the fire out in your house. Little things that we don't think about when you're on that side. Also think about where you're pushing that snow so you're not blocking your dryer vents and all your vents of the bad air that needs to get out of your house so that it doesn't back up into your house. More and more people have carbon monoxide detectors in their homes, which is great. We are running on a lot more carbon monoxide alarms. Sometimes it's faulty detectors, but we have actually had a uptick of carbon monoxide incidents. We did just get single gas monitors for all of our personnel. It was a donation from Detroit Axle. So now our crews will actually have monitors on our jump bags. So when we enter a building, we can be warned that there's carbon monoxide because it's colorless, odorless. You don't really know it's there unless an alarm's going off or you start getting symptoms. And so now we can actually be warned as soon as we can walk through the door and understand that might be leading to it. So we have a lot of great things going on, a lot of great additions and step up to services we're providing in our community. So a lot to be proud of. Just stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll close out updates on behalf of the City Manager's Office. I begin with gratitude. Class of Ferndale 2023 looks different than Class of Ferndale 2022. So I just want to express my gratitude with everybody for your commitment to service, your commitment to this team, this culture, and your patience with the process of change. We've seen a lot of change in the past 2 years. So I'll begin this 2023 with a lot of gratitude to my team. Thank you. Next, standard update, just a reminder that Monday, January 16th, city offices are closed in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So you will not be able to access city services, and parking enforcement is also suspended on that day as well. staff has kicked off our budget process, actually, which is a timely update. This week is the beginning of our internal budget process. So your departments are submitting their updates for their second quarter amendment scheduled in February, and also submitting their initial budget entries for the fiscal 24 budget that we will be examining with council in March during the budget workshop. And finally, just to circle back on Heather Van Pooker, I want to also express the same gratitude for Heather's service. She's been an excellent partner with the Ferndale Housing Commission. Through her relationship, she's really fostered City Hall and the Housing Commission together much closer than they were previously, as with the board. So they've made remarkable progress. It is an excellent opportunity. And I want to thank Dan Jacey and Justin Giuliano of our Human Resources Department for stepping in and providing that service to them. They handled the recruitment and will continue to handle the recruitment on behalf of the Housing Commission, which is again a testament to the building of the relationships. So thanks to your team, and go to ferndalemi.gov if you're interested in any open positions. Mayor?
Thank you very much. Tonight for call to council with council members, I'll start with Mayor Pro Tem. James.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Roll of dice. Councilman Polika.
It's been mentioned a couple of times about the My Salon opening up, and I was there for the ribbon cutting, and I have to say, when I first heard about this, My Salon, Sweets, thank you. I thought to myself, okay, it's going to be a bunch of hair salons in one place, and well, that's what I thought, and I just didn't understand the whole concept, and I was completely blown away. It really should be, my spa suite, all the different services that they offer there, massages and facials and nails and hair, of course, and eyebrows, just unbelievable. There's space for 42 micro businesses, and they already have like 36 or 37 of them already filled. So those are 37 new businesses that just opened up in the dot.
In our downtown.
In our downtown, where you're going to have clients coming to, and these micro business owners that are going to be wanting to dine and shop in the downtown as well. So I really, really am impressed with what happened in that space. It's 7,800 square feet, and they've fit 42 micro businesses in there. It's like another version of the Rust Belt. It's just really incredible. So I just wanted to share that.
I would also like to add that I saw a lot of the business owners have little quick chocolates. So they're doing business-to-business support as well, which is great to see. So thank you for mentioning all of that.
So I just wanted to share that. That was really a great experience, and I hope everybody gets a chance to check it out. And last thing is, another year, I look forward to working with all of you on helping move the city forward and working with staff. We have really the greatest staff working for the city, and always impressed with their professionalism and their ability to get the job done. So, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. League Snake. Oh, okay.
Well, I just want to say that I hope everyone had a wonderful new year, came into the new year safely. I want to congratulate Heather Van Hooker for her new opportunities and endeavors, and I wish her all the best. And to echo Councilmember Polika's sentiments, I just really am grateful for this team and for the city staff and all the time and commitment that you put into making the workings of the city work. And I look forward to a year of continuing the good work.
Excellent, thank you. And Councilwoman Mikulski.
I have one item tonight. I wanted to remind residents that the Ferndale Garden Club is hosting their annual Think Spring Gardening Expo at the library. That is going to be February 26th. The Ferndale Beautification Commission that we saw tonight is also going to have a table there where they'll have information about the city's official flower. It's always fun. I like thinking spring, especially in February when it's dark and dismal out. So if you're a gardener or if you want to be a gardener, please come out, and it's basically a seed swap. So lots of interesting things there.
Excellent, thank you. I have an on to me, and I have a few things tonight. One is I wanted to let everybody know that the City of Ferndale is part of the National League of Cities. I participate on one of their national federal policy committees on transportation infrastructure. But they send out emails all the time with what's going on and information. And so they are helping municipalities get the word out about the earned income tax credit and trying to get more residents in communities to have residents who are households that are eligible to earn and receive this important financial boost for families. So in 2023, the qualifying families with 3 or more children can receive up to $6,935 with the earned income tax credit. So I've asked our communications staff to put this out in my mayor's message, as well as any other, modes of communication the city puts out there, so that we can help residents learn about these important tax credits. And I also wanted to say that there are a ton of new funding opportunities coming out, particularly for cities who are looking to reduce their impact on climate. So climate neutral cities, climate action plans are really becoming more accessible with funds, and I think Ferndale and some of our neighbors are primed partners to go after this funding. So I hope that staff is paying attention to the climate money that is like unveiling itself this year. Last year was transportation funds, now it's more climate funds from the IRA policy. And finally, I am going to the downtown, or the Detroit Policy Conference tomorrow hosted by the Detroit Chamber. I am going through my work role, not my mayor role, representing the city. But it's important to me, as an urban planner professional in economic development, to really understand what's happening in Detroit and the downtown, because they are struggling to recover with the work from home policies and all these corporations. So what happens in Detroit impacts all of us. So the health of downtown Detroit and the neighborhoods are important to the health of the region, and I'm hoping to learn what they're doing, because we might have the same challenges but can do something on a more smaller scale that it may be complementary, or something that is just totally unique to Ferndale. But it's important to be supportive of downtown Detroit and what's going on down there, and learn from a bigger downtown and scale to our needs here in Ferndale. So I just wanted to say I pay attention to that stuff. It's important that we do, and I look forward to bringing back ideas. I know Lena loves it when I bring back a lot more ideas to the DDA. But just wanted to say that I look forward to learning. So that's all I have tonight. It's great to be back after a 3-week break from City Council. And like you, Councilman Polika, I'm eager to dive in. We've got a very busy year of 2023, and I hope that we all remain as healthy as possible, and that we have positive things that happen in our lives this year. So with that, I conclude our meeting at 8:43, and we'll see you next time. Have a good evening.